evening. Welcome to the Boyne Valley. You're all welcome. Step into the Boyne Valley. It is Monday, the 1st of May, 2023. The month of Bealtaine has begun. But when is Bealtaine? That is the question that we shall at least examine tonight. We may not provide conclusive answers. You're all very welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. I'm Anthony Murphy. This is episode number 223 of Live Irish Myths. We are returning to a subject that is actually familiar to us because I was looking through the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel earlier and I see that we have done a number of episodes about Bealtaine and about the traditions around Bealtaine. Tonight, our subject matter is slightly different in that we're looking for the origins of Bealtaine. In other words, when we go back to the old manuscript tracts, the mythology and the annals, etc., etc., what can we glean about this ancient festival, this ancient celebration? We know it's an important one, but when was it celebrated? That's the big question. All prompted by a post that I made today about 9 hours ago. So at about 11 a.m. this morning, I put up a post on the Mythical Ireland social media gently reminding people that today is not Bealtaine, even though I've seen a plethora of happy Bealtaine posts all over social media, that in fact today is not the astronomical date of Bealtaine. However, I have to obviously hold up my hands and say that in modern times, Bealtaine is indeed celebrated by a lot of people on the 1st of May. But that, or is it, is the question. Is that just a convenience of the modern calendar, which tends to celebrate important festivals like Imbolc on the 1st of February, like Bealtaine on the 1st of May, and like Samhain, on the eve of the 1st of November. Anyway, I've got to say hello to some people. Johnny Wilson is the first of our commenters tonight. By the way, if you are joining us, please do feel free to say hello. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Facebook, please feel free to make a comment, have a chat, and hopefully we'll have a grand old evening. I'm glad to report that it's 13 degrees Celsius here in the Boyne Valley. It's mild today. We didn't have any rain. We had rain very early this morning, with a lot of rain yesterday, very heavy rain showers. But it does suddenly feel as if summer is in the air. I've put the blind down because the sun is shining in strongly, and I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it like that for a little bit. Johnny Wilson is in sunny Texas, where Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter is also located, and she's telling us that it's 73 Fahrenheit, which is 23 Celsius in Texas. You've got 10 degrees over us today, Elaine. Sounds like a scorcher. Lovely stuff. Fiona Gaffney O'Connor is in the house. Good evening to you, Nora Gohiantuk and Sláinte. Hope you are well. Deborah York Writer, I think it is. He seems to be inviting one of our friends. Hey, come here, listen, the more the merrier. But Deborah, you're very, very welcome to the live stream. Brendan Byrne is in Glendalough, where the weather can't decide what it wants to do. Sounds very Irish. Brendan, hope you're having a lovely evening. Anna L is saying hello. Anna L, I think, is in Balbriggan, which is just down the road from us, about a 15-minute drive down the road in the county of Dublin. Wayne Bird is also here. Good evening, Anthony and the Mythical Ireland family. Beautiful waxing gibbous tonight. Looking forward to the flower moon on the 5th of May, halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice. Bealtaine, beautiful time of the year. Couldn't agree more. And we have a weeping beech tree in the front garden, which always unfurls its flowers at this time of year. I know this because it happens to coincide with the birthday of my twin sons, Luke and Josh, who will be 21 on Wednesday. And so I'm going to embarrass them. They're not watching. They don't normally watch the live streams, but I might play it back to them afterwards and to say a very, very happy birthday to both of you in advance of that special day for them. They are what I call Bealtaine babies, born at that time of year that is very, very optimistic. And they are two very, very positive, very, very wonderful young gentlemen. Dennis Dwyer is in Tala. What a beautiful start to the summer. I hope you're all keeping well. But I tell you, if the weather is any sign of what's to come, Yeah, we're welcoming summer with open arms. Triskel Hearth, who is Erica River Tree, is in the house in Louisville, Kentucky. Conas Atatu, Tame Goa, Erica, August 2 Fane. I hope you're in good form. C Reader, is that Connie? Connie Reader is watching from Illinois. Very, very delighted to welcome all the Illinoisans into the house. Nora is saying, hello, your royal HRH. Is Helen in the house? I didn't see her. Wow. Are we in the company of esteemed royalty? I don't know. We'll find out. Chungus Khan says, oh, Bealtaine bitch. Forgive my terrible Gaeilge. Come here, listen. It's better to try than not. And the sentiment is certainly welcome. Anne McCallum is here. Hope everyone's in good form. We've had so much rain over the weekend and also today, and there's more on the way all week, but the grass is so green and the trees and parks and gardens are gorgeous. Well, I suppose the positive thing to say about all that is at least it's not snowing. And you're very welcome. As always, Nora Gaffney Connor says the weather's fab. And she's obviously been out in the sea because there's a little sea wave. There's a little wave emoji there. I hope you've been enjoying the swim. John McHugh has joined us. Happy Bealtaine, greetings from Howth. Well, John, it's always a delight to welcome you. Good to see you. We haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're in good form. Life is treating you well. Peter Kennedy is also in Balbriggan. Nice to be able to join again this evening after a busy couple of weeks. Well, it's our very great pleasure to have you here, Peter. Rex Fortenberry is in the house. A most happy early Bealtaine to Anthony and the Mighty Two. Yes. Foreshadowing what we will be talking about in tonight's episode. Bernard Brian Mulholland is saying good evening, everyone. Trenonoa, Bernard Brian, you're very welcome to the stream. John Main is saying hello from a cool and wet. How do you spell that? Nopigia in Crete. Wishing everyone happy tidings for Bealtaine. I refuse to believe that anywhere in the Mediterranean could be cool and wet. Unless, John, you've done the same thing that you always do. You've brought the Irish weather with you everywhere you go. And right now, ironically, it's sunny here and dry in the Boyne Valley. Tom King says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have blast off. Summer is here. And there's a grand stretch in the evening. Hello, Anthony Almighty. There certainly is. Last week, when I was out photographing the Aurora Borealis, it was, I think, almost 10:30 at night before it was completely dark. I love the long evenings. I love them. Lynn Foley, these episodes always make my day better, says Lynn. Well, Lynn, and thank you for the Bealtaine wishes. Many happy returns. The episodes are nothing without the viewers, the participants. So it's lovely to have you here. Liv A. Cross is saying hello. Jigwich, Liv. Caitlin Moon is in the house. Falcha, Caitlin. I'm going to catch the replay. Enjoying a sunny evening in Dublin. And you know what? I mean, just because we've sun for one day doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be sunny tomorrow. So I think you're right to get out and enjoy it. Yes, says Nora. Oh my God, 223. Wow. I know. And like, we're not even halfway through the Squire book and we've done 7 episodes. There's more, as I said recently, there's more than enough material there to keep us going for another 100. Spike Willow is in the house. Many happy returns to you. Kathleen Glassley is in California. Good afternoon to you. Good, just 8 minutes after noon there. Hope you're in good form. Barb Jordan is in the house. Barb, it's always a pleasure to welcome you to the Mythical Ireland Library. Janet Moran is saying, nice to see you and all the two from a sunny and windy Boston. That also sounds very Irish, which is interesting because Boston does, of course, have a very high Irish expat population. And it must sometimes feel like home there, where we get a sunny day, but it comes with the proviso. It comes with a catch, which is wind. Burr Whelan is in the house. Many happy returns to you, Burr. Glad to see you. Anne Scott Doherty is just sitting here at her spinning wheel, spinning some yarn ready for story time. Hope everyone is, that sounds fine and dandy. That sounds like a lovely activity, you know? I wouldn't be any good at it. My fingers are, yes, as we've said before, you wouldn't want me doing your brain surgery. Alan Hoskins is saying hello from a gloriously sunny Ballina, Killaloe. Hopefully see a few of you at the Hill of Ishnok. Yes, indeed. Looking forward to that on Saturday. I will be there with Ongawa Mr. Tom King himself. So do look out for us. Archaeoastronomy Database, whose tie says the very concept of cross-quarter days is fascinating and multi-layered. Yes, indeed. It's on the 6th, the full moon. Well, the full moon is officially on Friday. It'll still be pretty full on Saturday on the 6th. But the date of Bealtaine this year is the 5th on Friday on the date of the full moon. That is a coincidence. We're not entirely sure whether it, we're not entirely, we can't say that the moon wasn't factored into the calculation of Bealtaine, but it is essentially a solar festival. Britt Griffin is saying hello. The groundhog came out from under my porch today. He looked a bit skeptical since there is still a bit of snow, but he stayed out for some nibbles. So I guess it really is going to be spring. Well, that's a good sign, Britt, and more of it. Poddy McCovale is saying, happy Bealtaine, everyone. Only joking, Anthony. T is saying hello from Offaly. I wonder, is your friend Coffee going to follow shortly? Oh, never mind. That's a terrible joke. Joe Butler shared the live stream to the Mythical Ireland community and Mythical Ireland creatives. I will miss the live stream, but I will catch the YouTube. Take care to it and stay mighty. Thank you, Auntie Joe, and thank you for sharing those. Much appreciated. Qatar, is it Katarzina? Did I get that right? Is saying hello, Fáilte. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Great to see some new faces in the audience today. Fiona Newman is watching from Ashbourne in the county of Meath, Kilyeaglon. You're very welcome, Fiona. Up Meath, not, because Louth are on the up. Watch Louth into the Senior Football Championship Leinster final. Playing the Dubs in 2 weeks, Sunday week. It was 32 Celsius in Dallas or in Texas yesterday. My God. Look, I keep saying it. That's just greed. You have to share some of that around. Give us a few degrees. You could well afford it. Brilliant. Edina Sparks is boasting of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is even hotter than where Elaine is. Edina, again, spread it around. Don Burns is in Oregon. Hello to all our Pacific Northwest viewers. Always a pleasure to have you along. Adrian O'Beglin is in the house. Adrian, Fáilte, Mochara, Conasata too. Tina is saying hello from Barry's Bay, Ontario, Canada. A very, very good afternoon to all our friends watching in Ontario. To Brendan HRH. Did I miss something? Maybe somebody will explain that. Michael Pike's in the house saying greetings and Conasata too. Thank you for the Kupla Focal. Oscailga, Michael, good afternoon to you and welcome. Sue Prenter's in the house. Looking forward to this episode. I hope so, and I hope you enjoy it, Sue. Monica Regley is in Switzerland. Monica, who I recently met here in the Boyne Valley, is back at home. Monica, what a pleasure to welcome you. Lexi Erickson is saying hello and bright Bealtaine blessings. Same to you, Lexi. You're very, very welcome. Who else am I missing? Danielle Stevenson is in Portlaoise. And many happy returns of the Bealtaine season to you, Danielle. Ivor Brennan is in Harold's Cross. That's in Dublin. Ivor, you're very welcome. And good evening to all our friends at Ballia Auchlia. Who am I missing? Irish Technical Thinker, who is in the house. Marcus, a very good evening to you. The full Irish Gary is saying, we made it. A fine summer's day on the sod. Yeah, finally we can say that. Don't know if you had the showers we had yesterday. Oh my God. Torrential downpours at times. Rowan Grove is in Denver, where it's bright and sunny and the birds are singing in our garden. Fantastic stuff, Rowan. And a very good afternoon to you. Gordon Farrell is in the house. Gordon, you're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Always a great pleasure to welcome you. T actually found the joke funny. Don't encourage me. I'm telling you, you will regret that. Don't encourage dad jokes. Catherine Woodruff is in a chilly Wisconsin. You see, this is what I'm talking about. You Texans, share some of those warm temperatures. Melt that snow in Canada. Julianne Osborne is in the house. Happy May Day to all our Tua and many happy returns to you, Julianne. What a pleasure to see you. We have caught up so far, and which is great. And now we can start diving in. Oh, I actually did compose some prompts tonight. I spent a couple of hours today looking through the sources for this episode. I said, look, why don't we take a break from Squire tonight? Why don't we talk about Bealtaine? That post about the proper date of Bealtaine got a huge reaction on Facebook and on Instagram, which was a little bit unexpected. And I said, well, it seems that people are hungry for this sort of information. So let's get started. And I will grab my cheat sheet off the printer. Apologies for not making full and earnest preparations for this episode. So I suppose the best place to begin is just to say that there is not a dispute as such about when Bealtaine should be celebrated. It's just that every May the 1st, social media gets filled up with people saying Happy Bealtaine, Lá Féile Bealtaine, and all of that stuff, which is great and it's grand, and I don't have any particular problem with that. And it actually turns out that when you look through the sources, you'll see that May Day has been probably celebrated on the 1st of May for quite a long time now. So it is a tradition. However, we have to look at its origins to disentangle where it came from, as it were, astronomically. And we find when we do that it doesn't fall on the 1st of May. And of course, the reason it's on the 1st of May is that is the convenience of the modern calendar, the Gregorian calendar, which I think was adopted. So the Gregorian calendar adopted in the 1500s. I think, wasn't it? The 16th century. Yes, 1582, wasn't it? Gregory the 13th issued a papal bull, Inter Gravissimas, in 1582, announcing calendar reforms for all of Catholic Christendom. And so we have the bizarre fact of, and I do think this is bizarre, that our New Year's Day is the 1st of January, which doesn't really tie in with any ancientness. Because if you, for instance, were to consider that the year begins at solstice, then that's the 21st of December. Some of you may believe that the year actually begins at Samhain, which is generally in early November, not the 1st of November generally, funnily enough. I want to say hello to Pádraig O'Comiskey. Said, hope all's well. Took a large group of people along the back of the wall today, that's in Dundalk, to show them the history and folklore that's associated with it here in Dundalk. Yes, Anthony, just read his comment. Finished up at Cuchullin's Castle, then brought some people up to Cuchullin's grave. Hope you had a nice day for it, Pádraig. It did some... no, that was today. Sorry, yes, not yesterday. We had a lovely day here in Drogheda today. Are you not having a wee dram to herald in the summer, falling on the ancient Irish sod, Anthony? Not right now, I'm not. But now that you've mentioned it, I might have later on. So there, yeah, I might actually. Are you encouraging me? Because I don't need much encouragement. The Barbara Murphy's in the house. Hopefully, before I miss too much. Yeah, we've only just begun. So let us introduce what Bealtaine is first and foremost before we actually delve into some of the sources. So today is all about the sources. What can we learn about Bealtaine from things that were written down in the past versus what we know about the modern being over the last century or two, the modern celebration of Bealtaine? Because Bealtaine was so big, in fact, that we have Kevin Danaher's book, The Year in Ireland, and we did some episodes, I'm not sure if that was last year or the year before, about May Day or Bealtaine celebrations in Ireland. And actually, we had to make more than one episode of it because there was literally so much material. Bealtaine was huge in the calendar in recent history, to the extent that actually, if you search for the word Bealtaine on the Mythical Ireland Facebook page, you'll see that 2 years ago we did episode 54 about Bealtaine. I live streamed from the Uisneach Fire Festival in 2018. I did a half-hour video while driving to Uisneach 3 years ago. Am I right? It says 3 years ago, but that has to have been recorded in 2019 because it didn't happen in 2020 because of the pandemic. Yes, 22, 21, 20. Yeah, so it has to have been 2019. You'll also see that episode 57 was about Bealtaine and May Day celebrations part 2, and there was a part 3. Episode 144, which was a year ago, was about the beginning of summer, Bealtaine and the beginning of summer. Episode 55 was about Ishnach, the sacred centre of Ireland, which has important connections. So lots and lots of stuff we've done about Bealtaine. Tonight will be just a little bit different in that, as I say, we're looking at the sources. We want to know where all this stuff about Bealtaine came from. Can we answer the question as to when it should be located in our calendar? Hope you have a fan. Yeah, well, actually, I did have the window open there a smidge a short while ago. It's nice, and I'm glad to say the fan heater hasn't been on, which is great because it'll save me on the old electricity bill. The Lecky, Lexi tells us that she celebrates, Bealtaine on the 5th to the 7th of May. People think I'm stranger than usual. No, in fact, you're much closer to what we think might be the original celebration of it. Just catching up with the comments. So let us begin. First place to start. And again, if you're being introduced to Irish and Celtic mythology, a good starting place is MacKillop's Oxford Dictionary of Celtic Mythology. And I'm going to read his entry about Bealtaine as a sort of an introduction to tonight, before we delve into the deeper sources. Forgive me, I have a stack of books on the ground here. And guess what? MacKillop's dictionary is not in them. I put it back on the shelf. Good job I know where everything is, isn't it? Honestly, I do. I know where absolutely everything is in this library. I've never, ever spent ages looking for a book. Page 35. Okay. And I shall don the reading glasses. Yeah, this is a wonderful place to start if you want to learn about Irish mythology. The Oxford Dictionary of Celtic Mythology, edited by James MacKillop. A few years ago, you may remember that I did invite James MacKillop on as a guest on the Live Irish Myths in Conversation series, but he declined on the basis that he had this work. I think this was published originally in 1999 or 2000 or 1998 even. 1998, and he said that it was so long ago that he wouldn't really be able to remember a lot of the material, which is fair enough. And I gather he's quite elderly. I think he might be in his 80s at this stage. Bealtaine. Now, this can be spelt a number of different ways. Not the pronunciation is a subject that I have spoken about before. Probably don't need to get into it in detail, but it's not pronounced Bealtaine in Ireland. Not ever. Bealtaine. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 spellings, and even a Manx spelling of it. These are Irish, Scots Gaelic, or Scottish Gaelic and Manx words for the seasonal feast fixed at 1 May, 1st of May on the Gregorian calendar, or 15th of May in Scotland. You see, they do things differently in Scotland, you know. I saw someone's Facebook post this morning, says Rowan, in which they expressed a liking for starting the season on the eve of April 30th and continuing until sunset of the astronomical date. Seems good to me. Yeah, I actually think Bealtaine is probably more of a season than a single day, but we can, I think, fix it to a single day, and we will get to that. Archaeotomy database reminding us that there are 3 days and 23 hours remaining until the astronomical cross-quarter day. Yes, indeed. As the end of the dark half of the year, Bealtaine is a survival of one of the 4 great Celtic calendar feasts, known in early Ireland as Imbolc, and of course he has brackets 1st of February. And you saw my posts. We did talk about Bealtaine a few months ago, where we spoke about the fact that it's not fixed on 1st of February. Lunasa on the 1st of August, and Samhain on the 1st of November. And again, the celebration of those on the 1st of the month is merely a convenience of the modern calendar. How were they celebrated before Pope Gregory and before even the Julian calendar? You know, good question. The day was also known as Céadthabhain in Ireland. Its counterparts, and we will see later that that literally means, I think, isn't it summer half or something like that? Its counterparts in Wales are Cyntefin. Did Colin May and Colin make the Callans of May, presumably? Blah, 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 blah. I won't read that because I can't pronounce it. Bealtaine may or may not derive from the veneration of Belinus. It was a good day to begin great projects. Both the Partholonians and the Milesians invaded Ireland on Bealtaine, according to Laura Gowalla. We will be reading those. A great body of oral tradition is associated with Bealtaine, of which the Bealtaine fires and the Bealtaine cakes or bannocks are the most significant. Great bonfires were built on Bealtaine in Ireland and on the Isle of Man. In Scotland, the fires might be on mountain tops. The fires could be called Tinna Aigen, need fire, or fire from the rubbing of sticks. In Cornwall, Calla May bonfires were still known in the late 20th century. An important ritual required herdsmen to drive their cattle between two fires as a way of preventing contagion through the next year, basically to keep the cattle free of disease. In Scotland, effigies of witches were burned in the fire as late as the 18th century. Oh dear. People danced around the fire sunwise to the right on the Isle of Man. Sorry, a semicolon. On the Isle of Man, they carried rowan branches or twigs. Hearth fires were extinguished and rekindled as an act of purification. Bealtaine was a time for the ritual eating of certain kinds of food. The Bealtaine cakes or bannocks were round, large and flat, usually made from oats or barley. They were large enough to be broken into several portions, one of which contained a black spot made by charcoal. The person who drew by lot the piece with the black spot was the Bealtaine carline or old hag. He or she might be subject to a mimed execution of being thrown into the fire or drawn and quartered. Now, just in case you're wondering about the burning of witches and all of this, probably what that is the remnant of an old celebration of the ending of winter, that period when the Cailleach was seen to reign, bringing her cold shawl over the landscape and spreading frost and snow and the barrenness of winter and the lack of growth. Now, next source, we're also going to read from the other great source, which would serve as a good introduction to Irish mythology, is the late Daithí O'Hogan's The Lore of Ireland, and an encyclopedia of myth, legend, and romance. Kathleen Gallagher is in the house, wishing us all a happy May Day. Many happy returns. She's saying, be sure to decorate your May bush. Yes, indeed. It's a little bit like a Christmas tradition, isn't it? You know, somebody's suggesting the beacons of Minas Tirith. Yes, indeed. The beacons are lit. Did they celebrate Bealtaine with big drinking sessions and partying like animals? Actually, probably, you know. Anya Ryan is on Tipperary time, only joining now. Planted the Maybush as per tradition, minus my dad this year. Anya, Tipperary time is the same as Dublin and Boyne Valley time. That's a very poor excuse. You're very welcome, of course. How do you know she's a witch? She's a witch. Yes. Anyway, what page? Sorry, I have taken notes here. 472 to 473. So this is a section from O'Hogan's work that it just relates to time. The basic Celtic division of the year was into two parts, for which parts the term samonios, meaning half, was used. The winter half was considered the beginning of the year, and the summer half the second part. As I was saying earlier on, some people might still celebrate Samhain as the beginning of the new year. Thus, the division in Ireland was held to be from Samhain to Bealtaine and from Bealtaine to Samhain. Samhain here meaning the beginning of November and Bealtaine meaning the beginning of May. There were two further subdivisions beginning at Oimelig or Imbolc, 1st of February, and Lunas at 1st of August, so that the year was in effect divided into the standard 4 seasons and further subdivided by the solstices and the equinox into 8. The word for May, Bealtaine, earlier Bealtaine, Beltine, originally meant bright fire, but it was also known in medieval Ireland as Céad Hamhain, meaning the first half. So I thought a second ago he said it was the second half. This is confusing me already. This secondary term must be very old, for it is common also in Welsh and Scottish Gaelic. We must suppose that its initial position referred to it being the culmination of the dark or first half of the year. Socially, the May festival was very important as it announced the coming of good weather and of the sowing season, and also was the time when the prospective milk yield became clear. The medieval literature claims that it was on this festival that the Gaelic people had first come to Ireland, that is, the Milesians, and we'll get to that. The celebration of the May festival was, of course, common throughout Europe, but it had certain distinctive traits in Ireland. In former centuries, for instance, a great fire was lit by the various communities at this time, recalling the Irish name of the festival itself, and no doubt deriving anciently from a desire to encourage the sun. Symbolizing the desired prosperity, some greenery was brought into the house. And there are accounts from the 18th century that describe how young people dressed up in greenery and celebrated the coming of summer by open-air dancing. The May bush, usually a white thorn, was cut and brought home, decorated with garlands and eggshells, and set up near the dwelling house. This being the beginning of summer, it was considered to foreshadow all of that season. Agriculture can be in many ways an unreliable affair, and so people were extremely careful to protect their prosperity. It was believed that some malicious neighbours might attempt to magically steal away one's good fortune, and this gave rise to several traditions and stories. For instance, a loan of salt should never be given to a neighbour who asked for it on May Eve, nor should a piece of the household fire be allowed to be brought outside of the house. Especially important was the dew in one's fields and the water in one's well, for it was believed that certain greedy individuals were keen to take a portion of these overnight with the same magical effect. Two well-known international legends appropriate to the context were particularly associated with May Eve in Irish folklore. One of these tells of how a woman, regardless of how hard she worked at the churning, could not make butter, but eventually was advised to put a piece of red-hot iron into the churn dash. A neighbouring woman who had put the harmful charm on the buttermilk came screaming to the house, contorted with pain as if pierced by hot iron, and could only get relief by herself taking a hand at the churning and thereby undoing the charm. Sounds like a little bit like an Irish version of a voodoo doll. The other legend tells of how an old lady took the form of a hare and drank the milk from a neighbour's cows until discovered. So there are some of the traditions around Bealtaine, as relayed by Dahi O'Hogan. Now, before I continue, let me just check the old Twitter feed, the comment feed. May trees have totally disappeared. Not here, but they are on the wane significantly, you know. Pat is wishing us all a happy Bealtaine or May Day from Vermont and many happy returns. Captain Shamrock is in the house. A very happy May season to you, Captain Shamrock. Paula Snow Queen is here. Paula, I didn't think I said hello to you earlier on, but you're very welcome. Teresa is watching from Wales. Instead of Oregon this time. See you in Ireland in a few weeks. Brilliant stuff, Teresa. Look forward to that. I do not know how to pronounce that name, but this person is telling us that the burning of the witch reminds me of my friend's culture's tradition to burn a marzana, and drowning the effigy in a large spring, pool, or river. Wow. I suspect that's got something to do with, as it were, killing off winter. You know, that, we didn't we mention, I know I had a chat with Blind Boy about it on his podcast, but we mentioned the Leighantha na Bo Riavach, the days of the brindle cow, at the end of March and the beginning of April, when it can get very cold and cattle can be killed. But this is the time of year when you kind of finally begin to feel that, yeah, look, the days are long and long enough. There's heat in the sun. There's growth in the earth. Things are going to be good, you know. The earliest reference that we find in any written source about Bealtaine is, of course, in the very well-known Samas Cormac, the 9th century Cormac's glossary. And that is all of the entries in Cormac's glossary, almost all of them are very terse. They're short and sweet. They don't say a lot, but they're important because this is the first time a lot of these things were written down. It gives us an insight, perhaps, into how old they are. Because Bealtaine is not mentioned in any older document, there is a tendency by some scholars to suggest that Bealtaine is an early medieval festival and that it has there's no evidence of it being in existence earlier than that. Of course, I would dispute that, and that's partly what tonight's episode is about, is getting deeper into its probable origins. Michael McHugh is in Bundoran. Any good info on the Black Pig's Dyke or Northwest Bealtaine traditions? Not specifically Northwest traditions. Black Pig's Dyke, did we do? I know I had suggested at some stage that we should. No, I don't have. I haven't done an episode on the Black Pig's Dyke, but it's definitely overdue. So that's one that we will definitely get around to. Roberta Robbins is in Ontario, saying hello, good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. Just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Mariana Dunn, better late than ever. Absolutely, no problem, and welcome. Padder Shields. There was Baal worship, yeah, and that has caused later antiquarians and Victorian era scholars to suggest a link between Bealtaine and Baal, and there's no link. I think the linguists are fairly satisfied that there isn't really any link there. Certainly not in County Mayo, says Joan. The May tree is sacred there, and this year so far I've planted so many myself. Gorgeous tree. Yes, it's. I think some of these traditions are actually coming back. Maybe they're not on the wane as much as I said. They had been, but maybe they're coming back. Anyway, this is Cormac's entry for Bealtaine, which he spells Belltaine. Bealtaine. I almost said Bealtaine. Oh no, don't do that. Mayday, i.e. Bealtaine, Bil-Tene, i.e. lucky fire, i.e. two fires which druids used to make with great incantations, and they used to bring the cattle as a safeguard against the diseases of the year to those fires. In Marg, they used to drive the cattle between them. And of course, that was between the two fires of Bealtaine. That was a way of purifying the cattle and guaranteeing them safety, as it were, from disease. And of course, look, since the introduction of farming in Ireland in the Neolithic, between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago, at various times it would have become obvious that a cattle plague, a cattle disease, could be disastrous if you relied on your cattle for your food, for milk, or for making butter, or whatever it happens to be, and for their meat, of course. And this is even mentioned in the myth of Doubt about the cattle murrain, the cattle disease or famine that happened in the reign of Bresel Bodibad, causing there to be only one bull and 7 cows left in the whole of Ireland. We should also read another. Pardon me, I'm just reaching down. Hopefully, in reaching down, I can actually get back up again. So if I get stuck here, somebody send help. Tom King is probably the closest one watching. If I get stuck and I can't get back up, Tom, you're to come over and help. Yes, another invaluable aid, especially in terms of more recent traditions around things, is the wonderfully comprehensive Deneen's Folklore, which is basically an Irish-English dictionary published in 1927 and November of 1927. And thankfully, it has been reprinted by the Irish Text Society on several occasions since then. So if you can't get an original, I have an original on the shelf, but it's delicate, and I have a more recent reprint. It's a fabulous insight into the idioms and the phraseology that was being used by Irish people a century ago, and of course before. And so I'm going to read his entry about Bealtaine, which is on page 87. Again, highly recommended. Now, it's in the old script, the old Irish. Sorry, getting rid of some dog hairs. Can you imagine it? Dog hairs in this. Well, as soon as I mentioned dogs, there he is barking. Bealtaine, the Irish May Festival, the month of May. So Bealtaine is also the name of our month of May. On Trio Law Bealtaine is the 3rd of May, for instance. Law Bealtaine is the first day of May. Mina Bealtaine, the month of May. Icha Bealtaine is May Eve. Shan Bealtaine is Old May, the month beginning about the 11th of May, brackets old style. I suspect, am I going to make a fool of myself here now? Do you remember the adjustment of the calendar that was made, and we lost 11 days? When was that? That was in the 1700s, wasn't it? Pretty sure it was. Yeah, the year 1752. The lost days. There was a correction to the calendar. Of course, there were riots about that in England, and it caused a division because it was seen as issuing from the Pope, and the Protestants didn't like it at all. Yeah. So the reason it would be celebrated on the 11th is because certain people who didn't like the idea of losing 11 days in the calendar, or maybe is it the opposite? When the calendar change was made, the old Bealtaine, which would have been celebrated on the 1st of May, was moved to presumably the 11th of May. Now, there is a phrase which is Idir ga hinne le Bealtaine, which literally means between the two fires of May Day. And that can mean actually to be in a dilemma, from the practice of driving cattle between two fires with a view to their preservation. And I have seen that, and I've reported on it elsewhere. I cannot remember where, probably in another of the folklore, another of the dictionaries. So when you say Idir na ga hinne Bealtaine, you may not be necessarily referring to driving the cattle between the fires. You may be referring to a dilemma. Forgive me for a second now. Give me a second here while I just check this. One thing that I did do was to look up the Onomasticon Gaelicum, which we did an episode on, at least one episode. And there are no entries in that for Bealtaine. Dos Bealtaine. Dos Bealtaine. Is it dos with a father or without? No, it's without. Dos. I'm not entirely sure of the pronunciation. Dos, I presume. Dos Bealtaine, which is the May bush. DOS being a tall tree with a thick branching head, or a copse, or a thicket, or a protector, one who gives shelter of or defense. It has multiple meanings. Or Cran Bealtaine, which is the May pole or the May tree. And it says here that Bealtaine and Samhain were the leading terminal dates of the civil year. So that is Dineen's introduction to the subject. By the way, I think that folklore costs about 45 or 50 euros. I got mine in a second-hand bookshop. I paid $3.50 for it. €3.50. What a treasure. What a treasure. Okay, what have we got? We have, yes. So we mentioned earlier that just catching up with Paula says there's no room on those shelves for any more books. Quite right. And Barbara replies, that's why he's piling them up on the floor. I have nowhere else to put them. How do you remember all this stuff? 24 years of reading it. Brendan is the quickest answer, you know. Yeah, so earlier we mentioned that there are a couple of interesting arrivals in Laura Gowalla Éireann, the Book of Invasions, where we have both Khazer, we have Partholon and the Milesians both arrive in Ireland at Bealtaine, but also possibly Khazer. Now, I saw someone commenting on a Facebook post today saying that the Tuatha De Danann arrived at Bealtaine. In fact, I did spend a bit of time today reading Laura Gowalla Éireann about the arrival of the Tuatha De Danann, and there is no mention of what time of year they arrived at. So I'm going to just read those very briefly, those passages. So allow me just a second to find the relevant. Laura Gowalla Éireann, Part 3, page 5. And as with all of these things, the original Middle Irish is on the left page and the English translation is on the right-hand page, which makes it very convenient. So Partholon, the son of Sarah, the son of Sru, the son of Estru, the son of Bath, the son of Rifath, Scot, from whom are the Scots, etc., etc. He had a voyage of a month to Aladacia. The voyage of 9 days he had, a voyage of 9 days he had from Aladacia to Gothia. A voyage of another month he had from Gothia to Spain. A voyage of 9 days had he from Spain to Ireland. On a Tuesday he reached Ireland upon the 17th of the moon on the calends of May. And the calends of May usually refers to the first day of May. But what I found very interesting about that, and indeed about the reference to the Milesian arrival, is that they also mention how old the moon was when they arrived. And I've been saying this for such a long time, that in pre-modern times, it was impossible to reckon your calendar without the moon. Really, it was. There was no point talking about, counting from the solstice to solstice, and how many days after winter solstice and how many days before summer solstice. It was too clunky. It was too impractical. But if you figured the moon in, the moon gave you individual phases, days. It also gave you that group of 7 days, which brackets the major phases. So when the moon is invisible, the dark moon, or what modern astronomy calls the new moon, there are 7 days from then until, or 7 days from the first appearance of the thin crescent to the half moon or the first quarter moon. 7 days from there to the full moon, 7 days from full moon to last quarter, and 7 days from there to invisible moon again. So it gives you basically, and then the idea of a fortnight, 14 nights, new moon to full moon, or first quarter to last quarter. Very, very handy. Or further, it is on the 16th of the age of the moon in the month of May that Partholon took Ireland. So in this case, it's saying it was the 16th day of the moon, which would be just past full moon. The full moon being, is the full moon the 14th or the 15th day of the month? But just past full moon in the month of May. So not specifying necessarily that it happened to be the 1st of May. And then it says here also, and in that 5th unit of the moon of the same month, Kildare took Ireland. Now, Kildare was the first of the arrivals in Ireland, according to Laura Gawala, at the time of the Great Flood. She was the granddaughter of Noah and had been refused a place on Noah's Ark and been advised to go to Ireland where there was no sin and therefore there would be no flood, but there was eventually. And the fascinating thing about this is the section of Laura Gawala dealing with Partholon. In the earlier section about Kildare, it doesn't say that she arrived on in the same month. So we effectively have 3 arrivals in May in this, what we might call the season of Bealtaine or the month of Bealtaine. We have Kildare, we have Partholon, and we have the Milesians. And we're going to read the Milesian bit now, which is in part 5 of Laura Gawala, which is the largest of the volumes, because it contains the section about the sons of Meal and then the role of the kings, which attempts to name and give some information about all of the kings who ruled at Tara. A considerable task. There were supposedly 142 of them. Just checking the comments. Now, John is asking if it makes sense to celebrate Bealtaine at the full moon or waxing gibbous to correspond with waning crescent or dark moon, Samhain. We are not in a position to say, and this is, tonight's episode will not be conclusive in any way. We're not in a position to say that the moon was not used in the calculation of Bealtaine, because, for instance, the moon was always used in the calculation of Easter. And the funny thing is that even before Easter, we know that there was a significant celebration at that time of the year. So it is possible. The only thing about the moon is that because the moon's synodic month is 29 and a half days, you know, there can be a huge variance. If you decided you were going to use, say, just for argument's sake, if you decided you were going to use the full moon to celebrate Bealtaine, there's a full moon on the 5th of May this year. Next year, that full moon will fall back by 11 days, which will place you in what, the 24th or 25th of April. Or if you add a month, you're into late May. You can have quite a swing in the celebration of Bealtaine. Tying it with the cross quarter date of the sun, I think, brings it closer to a firm date in the calendar. But that's not to say, for instance, John Wilmot, who is the woodland bard, shared some information earlier about some farmers in the area that he lives who still wait until the moon is in a particular phase before doing certain things, sowing certain seeds, for instance. Now, look, modern agriculture has, you know, largely dispensed, unfortunately, with ancient habits and superstitions and practices. But there are still some people who do things the old way, or at least give a nod to the old ways. The arrival of the Milesians, or the sons of Mil, is on page 59 in part 5 of Laura Gowalla. So the sons of Mil came into Inverscania and Inverphalia, and Erimon went left-hand ways towards Ireland till he landed in Inverculpa. If we follow according to common belief, it was in the third age of the world that the sons of Mil came into Ireland, a Thursday, according to the day of the week, on the 17th day of the moon, again just past full moon, on the calends of May, according to the day of the solar month. The company of the sons of Mil took Ireland, and then it was that Amergin, the poet, made this poem as he set his right foot upon land. Just give me a second, and I will read that. LXIX. One thing I don't like about the way that the translation of Laura Gowalla has been put together is the fact that all the poems are put in the back as a sort of appendix with Roman numerals on them, instead of in the middle of the text, which would be a beautiful place to have them. And this is where he said, "Am gway imwer, I am wind on sea." We spoke about this last week, didn't we? And that was in the Lou Festival of Light at Lawrence Gate, where I read the Irish and the English. Am tun trehen, I am ocean wave. Am foam mara, I am roar of sea, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, that was one of Amergin's famous chants. Of course, the main one was the one that calmed the storm on the sea, which was preventing them from returning to Ireland. That's Laura Gowalla Éireann. I have the complete set, and you can get those from the Irish Text Society, and they're available on the Royal Irish Academy website, I think it is. So I think that's fascinating that there are 3 separate arrivals. So there are 6 invasions or arrivals of peoples in Laura Gowalla, and half of them arrive at Bealtaine. Fascinating. Now, give me one moment, because I need to. The sun has gone down. It's getting a bit dark. I'm going to add a little bit of light, if you don't mind. And so there was. I was also looking at the annals in terms of the arrival of the Milesians, and there is a very short but interesting footnote in the annals of the Four Masters of Ireland, also known as the Annals of the Kingdom of Ireland by the Four Masters, composed in the 17th century at a time when things were changing drastically politically in Ireland. And the Four Masters were 4 monks who scoured Ireland for all of the annalistic records that had been kept with the various monasteries, and made a master record, as it were. There's a very interesting book, if I can find it. Slight sidetrack. A fabulously interesting book about the annals of the Four Masters, which is a brilliant piece of work. Of course, I can't find it now. See what I said earlier? I did, didn't I? I did say earlier that I knew where every single book in this library was located, and then I winked. Because I actually don't. No, part of the reason I don't is because I did move things around a while back. And that is just the worst thing you can do. To tidy things up, you're just better off. There is a very good book about the annals of the Four Masters. Anyway, I can't put my hand on it straight away. So this is a footnote on page 25. I'll read the entry itself before reading the footnote. The entry is: the age of the world, 3500. The fleet of the sons of Mila came to Ireland at the end of this year, which is interesting because they didn't come at the end of the year. They came at Bealtaine. I wonder. Yes. To take it from the Tuatha De Dananns. And they fought the Battle of Slieve Mish with them on the third day after landing. In this battle fell Scota, the daughter of Pharaoh, wife of Mila, and the grave of Scota is to be seen between Slieve Mish and the sea. Therein also fell Foch, the wife of Un, son of Uige, from whom is named Glen Foshi. After this, the sons of Mila fought a battle at Talchin against the three kings of the Tuatha De Dananns, Macul, Macecht, and Magrania. The battle lasted for a long time until Macecht fell by Eramon, Macul by Ever, and Magrania by Aurgin or Amergin. So the footnote says the following: the fleet of the sons of Mila, Nennius, a British writer who flourished about the year 850, says that they came to Ireland with a fleet of 120 Ciuli, Ciuli. McGagan, in his translation of the Annals of Clonmacnoise, adds that the sons of Meletius arrived in Ireland on the 17th of May, 1029 years before the birth of Christ. So not exactly on the date of Bealtaine, if you were to figure Bealtaine as being the 1st of May, nor does it seem to coincide with the old cross-quarter date, which would be closer to the 5th or 6th. As authority for this, he refers to a work on Irish history by Caoimh O'More, who was a very worthy gentleman and a great searcher of antiquity. But he adds that Philip O'Sullivan, obviously, in his printed work dedicated to Philip IV, King of Spain, saith that they came in the year before the birth of our Saviour, 1342, which is from this time present 1627, the number of 2969 years. So McGagan's, now I do have the Annals of Clonmacnoise, but by a different translator, not McGagan. So he says here that McGagan in the Annals of Clonmacnoise translation is telling us that the Milesians arrived on the 17th of May, 1029 years before the birth of Christ. Kathy May Deo has joined us on her lunch late today. Got here for a hello and hope all are well. All in good form, and we hope to see you on the replay, of course. You might be able to watch that later on, Kathy May. Always a pleasure to welcome you into the house. Michael McHugh says the little island mentioned in the poem in the Lower is called Inish Sour Island. I haven't heard of that. Thing about the annals is that they're very reliable for historical events, but when you go back into prehistory, it is assumed that they assigned dates to things. Who knows, you know? Erica is telling us that in Louisville, I customarily honour Bealtaine on May the 5th, which is our final frost date here. So it is safe to plant on or after that date. Well, the interesting thing, as I've said in the past, about the old cross-quarter dates, if you consider the cross-quarter dates being the halfway points between solstice and equinox, or equinox and solstice, they are actually dates upon which there are noticeable changes. In this part of the world, certainly, noticeable changes in the weather, in the length of day, etc., etc. Tarini Pendleton is in the house. Good afternoon to you. Joining us from Laguna Beach in California. The Scots preferred the moon as a means for calculating time and the sun, according to Hugh Evans at the Origin of Zodiac channel. I wouldn't be surprised. It's the only practical way to do it in the pre-clock era, you know. Just checking. There's a lot of comments, and I'm just checking that there aren't any questions or comments that I directed towards me or the subject matter. And on to Ishnok. So on Saturday next, the 6th of May, which is officially the day after Bealtaine, myself and Tom King and thousands of others will gather at the Hill of Ishnok in the county of Westmeath, in the centre of Ireland, to celebrate Bealtaine with the lighting of the Bealtaine fire. And that festival has become a big event and is the reinvigoration of something. But in case anybody was thinking that that was just a modern thing, it is actually based on records suggesting that there was once a Bealtaine celebration at Ishnok. I'm going to read a bit about Ishnok now. We've done plenty on Ishnok before. This may be a repetition of some of that. But what I would say about it is that one of the beautiful things about the Bealtaine of fire at Ishnok is, first of all, it's a huge fire and it's lit at dusk when it's beginning to get dark. And you really do, when you're at Ishnok and the lighting of the fire, you just know that the winter is finally over. You know that the summer has come. The other beautiful thing is that after the fire is lit on Ishnok, then some fires on the other hills in the vicinity are also lit, which is again a tradition associated not just with Ishnok, but with the hill of Tara as well. And that is a beautiful thing to behold. It's like watching those beacon fires from the Lord of the Rings. You know, somebody sees the main fire being lit and then lights or kindles the smaller fires. Eamon McDonough is from Roscommon, but living in Chicago. A very good afternoon to you, Eamon. Nice to see you. Sharon is saying a magical place. Yes, indeed, it is. It is. Susan says, do you say that Bealtaine is correctly celebrated on the 5th of May? Not always, and that was how I was going to conclude tonight's discussion, was talking about the oldest origins to do with the Neolithic cairns. So we will get on to that, and please prompt me again if I don't get back onto it. In the meantime, I just want to read a little bit about Ishnok. This is from a wonderful piece of work, which is called, it's a book called Landscapes of Cult and Kingship. And the authors are Roseanne Schott, Conor Newman, and Adele Rannoch, published by Four Courts Press in 2011. And this is a chapter called Monuments, Myths, and Other Revelations at Ishnok. Gondor calls for aid, and Rohan shall answer. Yet the perception of Ishnok as the centre point of Ireland could just as well be based on an older tradition that places far greater emphasis on its role as the centre of the cosmos, as an axis mundi. It is this concept of centrality that is most pervasive in the early literature, with Ishnok consistently portrayed as a place of origins and beginnings, linked to the other world, as a place where druidic and other divinely inspired judgments and proclamations are made, particularly regarding the cosmological divisions of the island, as a place of assembly with traditions of a fire cult, and as the site of an omphalos stone, a mystical well and a sacred tree. And of course, the omphalos is the umbilicus, the umbilical cord, or the belly button. Certainly, the very name Meath, M-I-D-E, as it was used to be rendered, recorded in the earliest written sources, implies that some conception of the medial position of Ishnok was already current by the late 6th century, and this is continually reinforced by the widely used place name Ishnok Meath, which has been variously translated as temples or angular place or hearth in the middle. Closely reminiscent of the Gallic Medionometon, the central sanctuary, each of these designations is fitting in its own way. Ishnok's association with fire, for example, is well known. According to Dinllenachus, it is the place where Meath, M-I-D-E, or Meadge, the chief druid of Nemed, lit the sacred flame that, quote, shed the fierceness of fire for 7 years over the 4 quarters of Erin, unquote. While elsewhere we see the landscape shrouded in a cloud of fire and 5 streams of fire emanating from its hinterland. The pseudo-etymology provided for Ishnok in Dinllenachus, Osnioch, which Osnioch becoming Ishnok, which has been translated by the editor as over somewhat, is also potentially significant, as it may bear some reference to the physical elevation of the hill and its unrivaled prospect over the central plain of Ireland. unrivaled except for, of course, Arda Hill Brelay. If Anne Geraghty Smith happens to be watching this at some point, fabulous views from there. It is a vista frequently invoked in descriptions of the medial status of the hill, and the one most commonly expressed with reference to the four cardinal points. Thus, in his manifestation as an all-seeing sun god in Tuchmar Bealtaine, the wooing of Bealtaine, for example, we're told of the wide prospect over which the Dagda presides at Uisneach, with Ireland stretching equally far from it on every side, to north, to south and north, to east and west. So the tradition of the fire goes back to the notion of the chief druid of Nemed, or the Nemedians, whose name was Meja or Meath, lighting a sacred fire there. As a number of scholars have noted, the identification of Uisneach as the navel of Ireland in early literature is paralleled by representations of the centre of the cosmos as a mountain, Mount Meru, for instance, a pillar, a fire altar, a tree, or a well of life in many other cultures and religious traditions around the world. I wonder if I shouldn't, the one thing I did not do, I wonder if I should try to get that Dintianicus reference. Metrical Dintianicus 2. Okay, let me do that. Volume 2, what page numbers? 42 to 43. I shall sing you an interlude while I look up the reference. And of course, the poem is called Meaja or Meath. Meath, the place, I'll call it Meath, which is the modern anglicized version of it, Meath. But I'm wondering, the fact that that I doesn't have a fada on it, Meaja, would suggest Midja rather than Meaja. Anyway, we'll call it Meath just to keep things simple. Meath, the place of the eager steeds, the road whereon Art the solitary used to be, the lowland full of the splendour of Louis, the level ground of the clan of Con and Covthach. Whence is the name of Meath given to the plain? To the heritage of the seed of Con the Hundred Fighter, Con Céad Cahach. What pure bold scion, bright the hero, what warrior was it whence it got its naming? Meath it was, the ardent son of Broth, the host-leading son of Death, for he kindled a mystic fire above the race of Nemed, Caesar of hostages. Seizer, not Ceasar, just in case you're wondering. 7 years good ablaze was the fire. It was a sure truce, so that he shed the fierceness of the fire for a time over the four quarters of Erin. So that it is from this fire, in truth, it is not a rash saying, it is not a falsehood, that their head man has a right forever over every chief hearth of Ireland. So the right belongs to the gentle air, Heir, of the plain of Meath, mirthful and bright, even a measure of fine meal with a white pig for every roof tree in Erin. Fantastic stuff. So that is from the Metrical Dintianicus, the story of the lighting of the fire at Uisneach in Meath. Now, we get to the final point or the final discussion of the evening, which is in relation to the possible even more ancient origins of Bealtaine. So up to now, we've been reading sources that go back variously over the 20th and 19th century. We've been reading the Annals of the Four Masters from the 17th century. We've been reading Dintianicus material. Metrical Dintianicus is spread over 12 or 14 manuscripts dating from the 12th to the 16th century. And the earliest reference to Bealtaine that we can find is in Sanas Cormac's glossary from the 9th century AD. Now, how far back in time does it go? Well, it just so happens that in the 1980s, Martin Brennan and Jack Roberts and Toby Hall and Hank Harrison and Siobhan Heffernan and a large group of researchers made lots and lots of observations at different places in Ireland. One of the places they paid particular attention to, other than, for instance, Newgrange, Nouth and Douth, were the cairns of Lough Crew. And they found that at Cairn S at Lough Crew, there was a sunset at the time of Bealtaine and Lunasa. Now, it has to be said that one of the difficulties with passage tomb orientations towards sunrises or sunsets is that they do not focus on specific days, because even Newgrange, which has a long passage and a specially constructed aperture called the roof box, even it, we now know, actually admits the sun into its chamber for 18 days before and after winter solstice, meaning that the sun shines in there for more than a month. So the cairns at Lough Crew likewise also admit the sun for about a month or maybe a little bit more. In the case of Cairn L, which I documented in my Mythical Ireland book, which is a Samhain and Imbolc, a sunrise alignment, there is an alignment there. The sun is shining into the chamber of that monument all through October, but it is only in the early days of November, as we approach the date of astronomical Samhain, that the light gets cut off and winter begins. So the cross quarter dates, you will not find a medieval source that tells us the cross quarter dates of Bealtaine and Lunasa and Samhain and Imbolc are calculated as the halfway points between solstices and equinoxes. In fact, what you'll find is that, for instance, Oimelig, as it's mentioned in Sanas Cormac, is said to be the time when the ewe's milk kicks in, as it were, for the lambing season. They don't refer to specific solar or lunar events. So what we're doing is actually cross-pollinating, as it were, or cross-referencing ancient Neolithic cairns dating from probably at least 3000 BC, probably a few centuries earlier than that, with written traditions that began to be written down only in the 9th century AD. Those things being separated by a huge, vast chasm of time by almost 4,000 years. But it is an interesting thing to stand at one of those cairns at Lough Crew, one of the cross-quarter aligned cairns. So there are several. Cairn S is the one we're particularly interested in because it has this alignment towards sunset at this time of year, and again at the time of Lunasa, after the sun has waxed out and reached its maximum declination and risen in the northwest for summer solstice. It sweeps back down the horizon and shines into Cairn S again on its way down the horizon. Cairn U is aligned towards sunrise at Samhain and Imbolc, the beginning of winter and the beginning of spring. Cairn L on Carnbawn is aligned on the same alignment, Samhain and Imbolc sunrises. And we also have Duan and Neil, the Mound of the Hostages on the Hill of Tara, which is likewise aligned on that same sunrise. However, it's not really that specific. For instance, those of you who have witnessed sunrise shining into Mound of the Hostages at Tara will know that it shines in there for several weeks, but it shines onto the rear stones much better at the time of the cross-quarter date. And that's because the passage is short and relatively wide in comparison to its length and can admit the sun over a range of dates. And this is the same thing for Cairn S. Now, last, I think it was August, in the company of Tom King, we made an observation up at Cairn S, which proved something that, or disproved something that had been said by some scholars, and that was that the Sligo group of cairns can't be seen from Lough Crew, but in fact Keshcaran cairn can be seen from Cairn S. Now, after last week's episode, I asked Ty, our good friend Archaeoastronomy Database, to calculate the exact date upon which the modern sun would set into the cairn on Keshcorran as visible from Cairns. And this is just amazing, but also annoying. When was the date when the modern sun would shine, would set over Keshcorran, visible from Cairns? It was the evening of that broadcast. Last Monday, the 24th of April, was the day upon which the sun would set into Keshcorran, visible from Cairns. And I missed it because I was live streaming. And also, the another annoying thing is that after a whole series of weather events, mostly cloudy, last Monday evening was a beautifully clear evening. It would have been a fabulously, gloriously gorgeous evening to be at Lough Crew, watching that sun setting into Keshcorran from Cairns. I'll now have to wait until August to see the same thing. But that strikes an interesting reference point here, because we are led to believe that the cross-quarter dates are so called because they mark the halfway in point measured in days between solstices and equinoxes. So, for instance, Bealtaine, we are told, is the halfway point in days between the vernal or spring equinox and the summer solstice. So if you were to count the number of days between vernal equinox and summer solstice, and that's generally around 91 days. If you think about it, 365 days, divide 360 by 4, you get 90. So it's generally just over 90 days. And you divide that in two and you get 45 days or so, maybe 46, 47 days, whatever. And you add that period, that 45 or 46 days, to the vernal equinox, and you reach the date of the cross quarter. Now, the fact that the cairns at Lough Crew are not specifically aligned on a date is interesting. The other thing is you cannot rely on the central axis of those cairns as a reliable indicator that that is exactly what's being pointed at. So, for instance, at Cairn L, actually the drama happens at Cairn L when the sun is at its minimum declination, the minimum declination at which the sun can still shine in there. So the sun at the beginning of October shines into the left-hand side of the chamber, in the middle of October shines into the end of the chamber, and at the end of October and the beginning of November shines into the right hand of the chamber. And the right hand of the chamber is where all the magic happens, the slender pillar of limestone, and the most decorated and the largest of the chamber stones are on that side. So there is some visual drama happening there. However, the alignment of Cairns towards Keshcorran would appear to be the midpoint, or the what we might call the axis of that passage. So I did this last year at the time of the discovery. I looked at Google Earth and I plotted a line from what I could, the best plot I could make from that what looked like the passage of that cairn out towards Keshcorran. And indeed, it does look like it's fairly consistent with basically the middle axis of that passage, which would suggest to me that Bealtaine, because at this time of the year the sun has been moving relatively quickly and now begins its slowdown towards solstice, that in fact the Bealtaine sunset into that cairn will be a tiny little bit right of the axis. And that may figure because if you're in the chamber of Cairn U, and you're watching the sunrise at Samhain or Imbolc, well, it would appear to me that, again, it's not the central axis of that. It's more to do with the fact that if you lean left in the chamber of Cairn U and look out through the narrow entrance, you can actually see the hill of Tara in the distance. And I think that the alignment was the way it was supposed to function was the same as Cairn L, in that, sorry, I'm confusing things slightly because I'm looking out of the chamber. So the sun is shining into the left of the chamber. Whereas if I'm looking into the chamber, it's shining into the right. So I just want to make that distinction. It's the same with Cairn L and Cairn U. It's the same thing. It's the fact that the sun is retreating down the horizon, and it's only when it's about to disappear and no longer be able to shine into the passage that it rises over something significant. In the case of Cairn L, it rises out of a destroyed cairn on Carrickbrack, which is a nearby hill in the Lough Crew complex. And at Cairn U, which is the one of the smaller ones beside Cairn T at Lough Crew, the sun rises out of Duan and Neil, the mound of the hostages on the hill of Tara. on the astronomical dates of Samhain and Imbolc. Now, I need to make more observations of that to prove that. And to make sure that that is accurate. One of the things that is lacking at Loughcrew, mea culpa as much as anyone else, my fault as much as anybody's, is that there needs to be a daily observation of the sunrises at Cairn New and Cairn L over those periods. And there needs to be a daily observation of the sunsets into Cairn S at this time of year and again in August. And I mean daily for for probably a month and a half, so that somebody can accurately tell us exactly where. Now, of course, on a certain number of days, the sun isn't going to be visible because of a cloud. But I think that's probably going to be the most valuable study to come out of Loughcrew in the near future, if somebody can do that. Lar Dooley, hint, hint, because Lar lives in the vicinity of Loughcrew and it's much more convenient for him to get there. But I think if somebody could carry out a daily study and actually plot the sun's position from day to day and tell us exactly where it was, say, on the 15th of April, on the 25th of April, on the 1st of May, on the 6th of May, on the 5th or 6th, or whenever it happens to be the astronomical date of cross quarter. When is the first time that it's visible in the chamber? When is the last date upon which it is visible in the chamber? And I think those things will yield valuable results from us, Anyway, it would appear from Loughcrew that there is a clear interest in this notion of the cross-quarter dates, because we also have the equinox at Cairn T. We have some unopened cairns like Cairn D on Cairn Bawn, which may yield an alignment towards a sunrise, or I think more likely a sunset at some point. We also have to factor the moon in here, as some of those monuments may also be accepting moonrises and moonsets at significant times in the lunar cycles. What we are largely missing from Loughcrew is solstice, although there is a destroyed cairn, a largely destroyed cairn on Patrickstown, the easternmost of the hill, which is reckoned to have, is it a winter solstice sunset alignment? So almost the whole calendar is covered at Loughcrew, but I do think that would be a very valuable study. So I suppose what I'm saying is that at the end of it all, what we can say for definite about Bealtaine is that it was first mentioned in the 9th century, which is over 1200 years ago. It was first mentioned as being an important time of the year, and it was a time of the year when the two fires were lit, twin fires, and the cattle were driven between those as a method of purification and keeping the cattle safe from disease or famine during the coming year. Beyond that, we can say very little with any certainty. Yes, we can say that the passages and chambers of the cairns of Loughcrew, which are highly likely to date to about 3000 BC to about 3500 BC. We can say that they seem to be interested in sunrises and sunsets at certain times of the year. But again, because of the broadness of the coverage of that, we need, I suppose, a more detailed study. Brennan and Roberts and company began that exploration in 1980, which culminated in the publication of their book, which I recently boasted I had got a first edition hardback copy of, The Stars and the Stones, Ancient Art and Astronomy in Ireland, and which some of us in Ireland have been honoured to continue that work with various observations down through the years. But I think what would be most valuable in terms of determining the cross-quarter alignments of Loughcrew would be a day-to-day study of exactly what happens. Where does the sun land on the horizon when it sets, for instance, at Cairns? When is the first date upon which the sun can be visible in the chamber? It's more difficult at Cairns because it doesn't have a roof. It's open, so it would be probably a little bit more difficult to observe. When is the first date upon which it enters? When is the last date upon which it is visible in the passage? And as Archaeoastronomy Database says, there is much work to be done to continue the archaeoastronomy analysis. I hope to be able to help move things forward as well. Yes, and I know that if you keep an eye on Archaeoastronomy Database's channels, he is regularly talks about upcoming proxy dates, what we call proxy dates, dates upon which the modern sun or moon are rising or setting on an ancient alignment. That would help us with those observations. Now I'm going to scroll up through. I've been talking quite a lot. So essentially, says Triskel Hearth, Erica, the entire island of Ireland is a giant sundial / celestial gauge. Yeah. And I think Michael Dames hinted at that with his suggestion that Ishnok was like a fire eye, and radiating from Ishnok were these alignments towards various places and various calendrical events, which is fascinating. Thank you indeed, Nora, and say hello to your mum from me, and I hope she enjoyed it. Why would the cairns not all be connected, says Brendan, starting with the East Coast, moving to the Midlands, and ending on the West Coast? Photo cells in each cairn should record this. Why would the cairns not all be connected? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Connected. It's a funny one, because you can't see the cairns of Brunabonia from Loch Crew. You cannot see Loch Crew from Brunabonia, and that's because the Hill of Slane gets in the way. But interestingly, the Hill of Slane has an ancient mound on its summit, which may or may not date to prehistory and may indeed be a Stone Age monument. Who knows, you know? I meant to say, Kelly is suggesting that we keep cameras in there to view the sun. Yeah, as they did at Newgrange. I'm not sure how that would operate, because it would really need somebody to be there, wouldn't it, to mind the equipment. But certainly that would be, I mean, live streams, you know, webcams permanently, not permanently, but placed for a period of time, that could be hooked up remotely and viewed remotely on each of the dates. Which of the burial tombs has the room on the left? Nouth, or that's Nouth, Gordon. That's the modern room. Yeah. I have looked at possible interest in dividing the year into fifths. So tenths would be just subdividing that. Maybe PMA on Facebook, and we can discuss further. Yeah, and I actually really love the 16-part division, because it's really 3 weeks. You know, it's 6 weeks from event to event, and then you can further subdivide that. It's really 3 weeks at a time. Catherine Woodruff is saying, at the altar wedge tomb, the alignment goes from the entrance across the water to the hill point further down the peninsula. Perhaps to find the line, we need to look at the distant landscape. Yeah, and that is true in many cases where monuments are aligned to features, man-made and natural, that are very distant, like Keshcoran being visible from Loch Crew. And by the way, that is... I don't know, did I say it in the live stream? Do I have to play the live stream to get that? Yes, 94 kilometers, 58 and a half miles away. Incredible. Who else? Indeed, with passage tombs, says Archaeoastronomy Database, that's Thai. It is often the maximum angles that define the span, with the central axis falling within that division. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that such a study is needed. Such amazing and beautiful facts. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Susan, and a very good afternoon to you. That's interesting, Ty. Interestingly, if you divide the year into 16 parts of 22 or 23 days, then no moon phase will repeat in that span, making it easy to pinpoint a lunar occurrence within a solar division. Very good observation, that. Definitely some Isaac Newton running around Ireland back then, says Marcus. One of the things that I suppose is disruptive and annoying about the Gregorian calendar is the fact that it has this sort of arbitrary apportioning of 30 or 31 days, in the case of February 28. And that itself is only very approximately related to the lunar month, because the lunar month is best reckoned, I think, by the synodic. full moon to full moon, rather than the tropical, the return to the moon against the backgrounds, or sidereal or tropical. They're pretty much the same thing. The return of the moon to the same background stars, or the return of the moon to uh, the same background stars in relation to the nodal cycle of the moon, um, which is 29 and a half days. Uh, the modern calendar, you will know, if you've tried to keep track of moons, you will know that, as I said, for instance, there's a full moon on the 5th of May, which is in a few days' time, 4 days' time. There's a full moon. Next year, the equivalent full moon will be in, I think, the 24th or the 25th of April. So we may or may not go back to Charles Squire next week. I mean, there's plenty of time to do Charles Squire. But certainly next Monday, I would hope to give you something of a report from Ishnok. I will do my very best to do at least one little live stream from Ishnok. And the reason that mightn't happen is because last year, myself and Tom were just tremendously busy. And there were so many people and there were so many conversations that the time just literally flies by. Hours and hours zips by. And suddenly the fire is lit and suddenly people are going home, But I'll do my very best to do at least one live stream. I'm hoping to bring the camera, capture some of the action, as it were, capture some of the beauty of the event. Hope we get a nice day for it, actually. But anyway, things are looking up so far. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening. That is our exploration of the best that we can do in terms of where Bealtaine is mentioned in the sources. And we really come to no firm conclusion at the end of it. If somebody says to you that Bealtaine is on the 1st of May, that is certainly a tradition that goes back at least a couple of centuries. If somebody else like me says to you that Bealtaine should be celebrated on the astronomical cross-quarter date, well, when you ask for the sources for that, in fact, there are no sources. The only sources are the alignments of the ancient monuments. And again, I don't think that we have enough certainty there to say that is definitely what they were aligned on and the only thing they were aligned on. However, it is intriguing. And as I say, further study is required. Have a great Bealtaine week. We have, in the Northern Hemisphere, arrived into summer. In the Southern Hemisphere, they are in their, what are they celebrating? They're celebrating Samhain, actually, the opposite end of the year. And I hope that the sun shines on you, no matter what you're doing and where you are in the world. We'll see you all again very soon. There's lots of stuff about Bealtaine on the Mythical Ireland website. There is a search feature on the website on every page. In the top menu, there is a little, magnifying glass icon, and you can search the website for anything to do with Bealtaine. Don't forget also, the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel is a very good resource. There are now 1,400 videos on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel, enough to keep you busy for a long, long time. If you're only starting at it now, you have a lot of stuff to catch up on. But there's plenty of stuff on Bealtaine and just on the YouTube channel if you're interested in further exploring this topic, and especially in relation to the more modern celebrations, the modern traditions and superstitions around Bealtaine. We did some episodes on that, so they are there for your viewing pleasure. Thank you, one and all. It's been a great evening. Stay safe. Have a fabulous week. Hope the sun shines, as I say, wherever you are. Don't forget, if you want to support Mythical Ireland, please do consider becoming a patron and getting extra goodies as a result of that support. And that would be very gratefully received. We'll see you all next week, although it is highly likely, I hope, that we will see you indeed. I'll see some of you in person at Ishnok on Saturday. If not, we'll see you virtually through some live stream, perhaps on Saturday. And if not, don't forget to come back again next Monday for the next episode of Live Irish Myths. We'll see you all then. Ichawa Kolosov, Slán go fóill, agus tóg go bogé. Take it easy.